Good evening, I'm Alma Angeles, and you're watching Eagle News International. On tonight's headlines. Our top story today, the Biden administration has made a controversial announcement stating that it will provide cluster munitions to Ukraine. President Volodymyr Zelensky of Ukraine achieved a significant diplomatic victory today. He secured crucial backing from Turkey for Ukraine's aspirations to join NATO, following a recent pledge from the U.S. to provide cluster munitions capable of inflicting massive damage on Russian forces in the battlefield. Dutch Prime Minister Mark Rutte's coalition government has resigned after failing to reach a deal on migration. And President Marcos Jr. acknowledges that the government's efforts to generate quality employment are still a work in progress.
We don't have the same biases or emotions that can sometimes cloud decision-making and can process large amounts of data quickly in order to make the best decisions.
Plus, the International Telecommunication Union, or ITU, a United Nations agency, hosted a groundbreaking news conference in Geneva featuring 9 AI-enabled humanoid robots. And our top story today, the Biden administration has made a controversial announcement stating that it will provide cluster munitions to Ukraine. Ukraine has been requesting these weapons from the U.S. since last year. President Biden addressed the reasons behind this decision earlier today. Let's listen to what the White House had to say.
And so we want to make sure that the Ukrainians have sufficient artillery to keep them in the fight in the context of the current counteroffensive. And because things are going a little slower than some had hoped, there are very high expenditures of artillery rates. So this is to make sure that the Ukrainians have the confidence that they have what they need, but frankly also that the Russians know that the Ukrainians are going to stay in the game.
The decision comes as allies rally to support Ukraine's counteroffensive by ensuring a steady supply of weapons. However, cluster munitions have long been a subject of debate due to their devastating effects. When these munitions explode, they scatter dozens of small bombs over a large area, resulting in more widespread destruction compared to single rounds. And what makes them particularly controversial is that some of these small bombs may not explode upon impact, posing a long-term threat to civilians. They can remain embedded in the ground, potentially causing harm weeks, months, or even years later. Let's listen to what the White House had to say on this matter.
And being short on artillery, it is vulnerable to Russian counterattacks that could subjugate more Ukrainian civilians. That is the thinking behind our decision. We consulted closely with allies in deciding to do this, and some allies who are not signatories to the Oslo Convention embraced it with open arms, said this is absolutely the right thing to do.
Now, to address these concerns, officials have stated that the United States will only provide cluster munitions with a dud rate below 2.35%. More than 100 nations have signed the Convention on Cluster Munitions, a treaty that bans their use, but the United States is not among them. The Biden administration emphasized that Ukraine has assured the United States that they will take measures to minimize the chances of civilian harm.
The Ukrainian government has offered us assurances in writing on the responsible use of DPICMs, including that they will not use the rounds in civilian-populated urban environments, and that they will record where they use these rounds, which will simplify later demining efforts.
In the coming days, the U.S. plans to send approximately 10,000 cluster bombs from its stockpile in Europe to Ukraine. This decision has sparked much discussion and debate as it carries both strategic implications and potential humanitarian concerns. Let's hear from one official on the difficulty of making this decision.
We recognize that cluster munitions create a risk of civilian harm from unexploded ordnance. This is why we've deferred the decision for as long as we could. But there is also a massive risk of civilian harm if Russian troops and tanks roll over Ukrainian positions and take more Ukrainian territory and subjugate more Ukrainian civilians because Ukraine does not have enough artillery. That is intolerable to us.
Now, President Volodymyr Zelensky of Ukraine achieved a significant diplomatic victory today. He secured crucial backing from Turkey for Ukraine's aspirations to join NATO, following a recent pledge from the U.S. to provide cluster munitions capable of inflicting massive damage on Russian forces in the battlefield. Take a look.
І, звичайно, торкнулися сьогодні ключових питань нашої співпраці в рамках НАТО, зокрема, підготовки до саміту у Вільнюсі. Я в розмові підняв питання щодо запрошення України в НАТО. Був радий почути, що президент сказав, що Україна заслуговує стати членом NATO.
President Zelensky's talks in Turkey, a strategic member of NATO with complex relations with the West, were closely monitored by the Kremlin. Russia has sought to break its international isolation by fostering strong ties with President Recep Tayyip Erdogan. Erdogan has positioned himself as a neutral mediator in the conflict, increasing wartime trade with Russia while providing Ukraine with drones and other weapons that help deter Kremlin forces from capturing Kiev in the early weeks of the war. While reiterating his call for both sides to engage in peace negotiations, Erdogan took the risk of provoking Russian President Vladimir Putin by openly expressing unequivocal support for Ukraine's NATO aspirations.
Siz Ukrayna NATO'ya üyeliği hak ediyor. Her zaman ısrarla savunduğum bir hususu huzurlarınızda bir vesileyle tekrar vurgulamak istiyorum. Adil bir barışın kaybedeni olmaz. Taraflar arasındaki anlayış farklılıklarına rağmen barış arayışlarına bir an evvel geri dönülmesi en samimi arzumuzdur.
Meanwhile, Erdogan announced his intention to personally update Putin on the negotiations during the Kremlin leader's first visit to Turkey since the invasion. The Turkish leader disclosed that he and Putin will discuss potential prisoner exchanges as well as the extension of a grain shipment agreement brokered last year.
Rusya tarafıyla da görüşme halindeyiz. Onlarla da görüşüyoruz. Konuyu Sayın Putin'le görüştüm ve önümüzdeki ay Sayın Putin'in de aynı zamanda Türkiye ziyareti olacak. Tekrar bunu yüz yüze görüşme imkanımız olacak.
The construction of a new campsite in Belarus has raised speculation about the potential housing of Russia's Wagner fighters. Last month, the Wagner group rebelled against the Russian army's leadership, but ultimately reached a deal with the Kremlin, mediated by Belarusian leader Alexander Lukashenko, to end the mutiny. The agreement involved Wagner boss Yevgeny Prigozhin and some of his men relocating to neighboring Belarus. However, on Thursday, Lukashenko cast doubt on the deal by revealing that neither Prigozhin nor his mercenaries were present in Belarus.
Касается Евгения Васильевича Викторовича, да? Евгения Викторовича Пригожина, он находится в Питере, где он сегодня утром, может быть, в Москву поехал, может, еще где-то, но на территории Беларуси его нет.
An aide to the Belarusian Defense Ministry, Leonid Kaczynski, confirmed this during a tour of the campsite with a group of foreign journalists who received a rare invitation to the tightly controlled country for a roundtable interview with Lukashenko.
Заполненный.
Лагерь пустой, вы сейчас в этом убедитесь, пройдете, можете вот зайти в палатку любую. В этой палатке проживает личный состав, военнослужащие вооруженных сил Республики Беларусь, которые осуществляют охрану вот этого палаточного фонда.
The campsite, located in central Belarus, consists of 300 empty tents capable of accommodating approximately 5,000 people. Only one tent appeared to be occupied by guards resting. Kaczynski explained that the tents were set up in anticipation of planned exercises in the autumn. Speculation surrounding the campsite's purpose heightened when satellite images circulated in media reports indicating construction activity during the time of the mutiny. While Lukashenko denied that Belarus was constructing a new facility, he acknowledged offering former military sites, including the one in Sel, to the Wagner Group. The potential arrival of thousands of Russian mercenary fighters has divided locals in the nearby town of Asipovichi. The Wagner private mercenary army has faced allegations of abuses in various countries such as Ukraine, the Central African Republic, and Syria. Some residents express fear and concerns over the potential presence of Wagner fighters, emphasizing their desire for peace and the well-being of their children. Others, however, expressed a lack of worry and believed that if it needed to be done, it needed to be done.
Все мы знаем, все следим, у всех есть интернет и все следим. Ну, я еще раз говорю, что вполне спокойно. У меня нет никакой паники, нету... Ну, понятно, что что-то там, какая-то неизвестность есть в определенном смысле, что будет и что как. Но так абсолютно спокойно.
Belarus itself has had a complex history with the Wagner Group in the lead-up to Lukashenko's disputed re-election in 2020. Belarus arrested around 30 Wagner fighters accused of plotting to destabilize the country. Meanwhile, U.S. Secretary Janet Yellen commenced a 4-day visit to Beijing on Friday, where she emphasized the need for market reforms, while stressing that the U.S. is not seeking to decouple from China. Secretary Yellen met with American business leaders and had discussions with former Chinese economist Czar Li Hu. Let's listen to what Secretary Yellen had to say.
I've made clear that the United States does not seek a wholesale separation of our economies. We seek to diversify and not to decouple.
During her meeting, Secretary Yellen reassured her audience that the U.S. and its allies will respond to what she referred to as China's unfair economic practices. She also emphasized the importance of maintaining clear lines of communication between both countries. Let's listen to another soundbite from Secretary Yellen on the global economy.
The decoupling of the world's two largest economies would be destabilizing for the global economy, and it would be virtually impossible to undertake.
Now, this visit marks the second time in recent weeks that a top official from the Biden administration has traveled to Beijing. The goal of these visits is to ease tensions following the incident where the U.S. military shot down a Chinese government balloon over the U.S. Secretary Yellen's agenda includes a meeting with Premier Li Qiang, during which she's expected to raise concerns about the impact of China's new counter-espionage law on U.S. firms.
I'm also concerned about new export controls recently announced by China on two critical minerals used in technologies like semiconductors. We're still evaluating the impact of these actions, but they remind us of the importance of building resilient and diversified supply chains.
In turn, Beijing is expected to address the Biden administration's plan to limit U.S. companies' investments in China, particularly as the country's recovery from the global health crisis is progressing slower than anticipated. Meanwhile, Dutch Prime Minister Mark Rutte's coalition government has resigned after failing to reach a deal on migration.
Wij hebben met elkaar de conclusie getrokken dat, voor zover wij erover gaan, en we gaan er natuurlijk niet over met z'n negen, daar gaat het hele kabinet over, we er met z'n vieren niet uit gaan komen. En dat is voor mij aanleiding geweest om de ministerraad bij elkaar te roepen en hen het voorstel te doen, gegeven die politieke situatie, ons ontslag aan te bieden. En dat is unaniem aanvaard.
Now, the Prime Minister, the Netherlands' longest-serving leader, had wanted to tighten curbs on reuniting families of asylum seekers. The ChristenUnie, a Christian Democratic party, strongly opposed the plan to cap refugee family member numbers. After 3 days of talks, a compromise on a so-called emergency button that would have only triggered the restrictions in case of large migrant numbers wasn't enough to reach a deal on Friday. The Netherlands is expected to hold elections in November following the fall of the coalition. Now, Rutte had promised a structural solution to the problem after what he called shameful scenes at the asylum centers. The coalition, which local media said was not a happy marriage, last year faced a major scandal over overcrowded migration centers in which a baby died and hundreds of people were forced to sleep in the open. Local media said the Prime Minister dubbed Teflon Mark after the non-stick pan coating for his political slipperiness had taken a tough stance on migration to deflect a challenge from the right wing of his party. In tonight's other news, President Marcos Jr. acknowledges that the government's efforts to generate quality employment are still a work in progress. Speaking to reporters after the graduation ceremony of the Philippine Army Officer Candidate Course GAIGMAT Class 58-2023 in Fort Bonifacio, Taguig City last Friday, the President emphasized the administration's commitment to creating a business-friendly environment in the country.
Ang punot dulo nitong lahat ay trabaho talaga. Kailangan magkaroon ng economic activity para magkaroon ng trabaho ang ating mga kababayan.
Now, he stated that it will take time before the government's job creation initiatives start yielding tangible results.
Kaya't lahat naman ng ating ginagawa sa ekonomiya ay para mabigyan ng hindi lamang yung underemployed na klase na trabaho, kundi yung magandang trabaho na may future, may benefits, lahat yan. Kaya't yun ang aming binibilang. Kaya't nakakatuwa naman at dahan-dahan ay umaakyat yung numero ng employed dito sa Pilipinas.
The President highlighted several initiatives aimed at achieving this goal, including the integration of digitalization in government processes to streamline business operations and the ongoing training and upskilling of the country's workforce. Let's listen to what the President had to say. According to state statisticians, the number of unemployed individuals in May dropped to 2.17 million, a decrease from 2.93 million compared to the previous year. Additionally, the employment rate increased to 95.7% in the same month, rising from 94% in 2022. The underemployment rate also showed a decline, reaching 11.7% in May, down from 14.5% year-on-year. President Marcos commended these positive developments and expressed the government's ongoing commitment to further improvement. One of the key legislative priorities for this year, identified by the Legislative Executive Development Advisory Council, or LEADAC, is the National Employment Action Plan law. This proposed legislation aims to address employment concerns and contribute to the creation of quality jobs in the country. The El Niño weather pattern has re-emerged in the Pacific Ocean after a 7-year hiatus, according to the World Meteorological Organization. Now, this development heightens the probability of increased heat and the potential for new temperature records. WMO stressed the importance of governments intensifying their efforts to mitigate the impacts of El Niño on various aspects of society, including human health, ecosystems, and the economy.
The impact of the El Niño event on global temperature is likely to surge the global temperature because El Niño will add up to the anthropogenic warming and likely to increase the global temperature. The tropical Pacific Ocean is currently experiencing El Niño condition. And this is a result of rapid and substantive change both in the atmosphere and in the ocean. The temperature is expected to be above the average in a warm band of latitude between 50 south and 50 north. That's a place where you have locations such as the Maritime Continent, Caribbean, Central America, northern part of South America. WMO issued another report where we try to estimate the likelihood of one of the next 5 years reaching and even exceeding the 1.5 degree. So basically with El Niño, we have a high probability for this temperature to be one of the warmest on record.
Well, we drink a lot of water. We stay as much as we can in the airco. And if we are outside, we try to stay in the shade.
I need water. No matter what I put on my feet, I always would need water. And then I would think we have to look into a barley like this, and we have to find out some plants of barley where the roots is bigger, those here is bigger, so they can get down on the earth to pick up the water. from longer down.
And looking back 10 or 20 years, I would say that this is the driest beginning of June, for at least that period.
On Thursday, Copernicus, a European climate monitoring service, released its analysis for the past month, revealing that June was the hottest on record. Now, these findings align with a similar monthly report expected from the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration next week. Both Copernicus and NOAA base their reports solely on observations gathered from land and sea, encompassing a vast number of data points. Now, this comprehensive approach allows for a more accurate assessment of global temperature trends, eliminating variations simply related to weather fluctuations. Now, continuing with our focus on climate change, the global heating crisis has emerged as a burning human rights issue. Extreme weather events and climate disasters pose a severe threat to humanity's universal right to food, according to UN Rights Chief Volker Turk. Speaking before the UN Human Rights Council on Monday, Mr. Turk advocated for a just transition to a green economy.
We know that our environment is burning. It's melting, it's flooding, it's depleting, it's drying, it's dying. On our current course, the average temperature increase by the end of this century is predicted to be 3 degrees Celsius if nothing changes, and our ecosystems, our air, our food, our water, and human life itself would be unrecognizable. Vast territories would disappear under rising oceans, or become effectively uninhabitable due to heat and lack of water. Our topic this morning is the right to food, and clearly this is comprehensively threatened by climate change. If this is not a human rights issue, what is?
Addressing the council members, Mr. Turk emphasized the urgency of taking action and not leaving the burden of solving this crisis to future generations. He called upon today's leaders, the ones responsible for making critical decisions, to heed this clear message.
We must not deliver this future of hunger and suffering to our children and their children, and we don't have to. We, the generation with the most powerful technological tools in history, have the capacity to change it. If we put an end to senseless subsidies to the fossil fuel industry and start phasing out of fossil fuels. If we make COP28 the decisive game changer that we so badly need, we can fulfill the Sustainable Development Goals, we can realize our universal right to food, and we can uphold our right to a clean, healthy, and sustainable environment, as was adopted by the General Assembly last year. We can, because there is still time to act, but that time is now.
South Korea's government has tried to assuage public concerns about Japan's plan to release treated water from the Fukushima nuclear plant, saying it would have negligible consequences for the country. The International Atomic Energy Agency gave the green light for the plan this week.
Maybe in a few years, where people start to see that all the results, like when you go and have an X-ray or a blood test, when you see that the results are correct and there is no lie, nobody's lying to you, then maybe trust will be reconstructed. One important element that needs to be said. Tritium is everywhere. Here there is tritium. So I think we need to, and perhaps we didn't do it in as perfect way as I would have liked, but we need to demystify certain things. So radiation is everywhere, tritium is everywhere. The issue is the amounts. One of the reasons, and this has been hotly debated and will continue to be debated, I'm sure, is why you don't remove the tritium. You don't remove the tritium because the levels are so low, it's almost indiscernible.
It was met with widespread opposition in South Korea, where some people fear that the water could pollute the ocean and the salt sourced from the seawater. South Korea conducted its own separate review of the plan and found that Japan would meet or exceed key international standards. The study also found that it would take up to 10 years for the treated water to circulate back into the seas around the Korean peninsula, by which time the radiation level would be scientifically irrelevant. However, some South Korean MPs and civic groups are still opposed to the plan, claiming that there are multiple safer alternatives, such as burying the treated water deep underground or vaporizing it. The hunger-striking lawmaker Woo Won-shik told AFP that the IAEA report had failed to take into account long-term effects on humans via the food chain.
우리 국민들의 안전을 보장할 수 없는, 그리고 해양 생태계에 대한 영향도 없고, 일본이 이미 결정한 것을 일본 의뢰에 의해서 만들어진 보고서이기 때문에 그 결과를 우리가 믿을 수 없다, 이렇게 생각하고 있는 거죠. 그래서 이 단식을 중단할 수 없는 거예요.
Meanwhile, vendors at Seoul's sprawling Noryanjin Fish Market have expressed frustration over the high-profile domestic opposition to Tokyo's plan, saying it is bad for their business.
어디 어느 나라는 안 버려요? 다 버리는 거야, 함께. 그런 거 하지 말고 오늘 방송 오면 내일 안 와, 손님. 예를 들어 요 방송 안 할 때는 근데 사람 나왔어. 근데 지금 자꾸 방송을 하니까 사람 하나도 안 나와. 얼마나?
UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres emphasized the importance of establishing guardrails rooted in human rights, transparency, and accountability for the development of artificial intelligence for the good of all. Speaking on Thursday, Mr. Guterres highlighted the need for AI to be beneficial to everyone, including the significant portion of the global population who are still offline. He underscored the urgent need to reach a consensus on the guiding norms for the deployment of AI. Let's listen in.
Artificial intelligence is making headlines on a daily basis, and those headlines are not always positive. Even tech leaders and experts are warning of the potential dangers of AI, from the development and use of autonomous lethal weapons to turbocharging mis and disinformation that undermine democracy. But AI also has the potential for enormous good. Its powerful tools could drive forward the 2030 Agenda and the Sustainable Development Goals by making a massive leap in healthcare and eradicating diseases that affect millions, by transforming education and empowering people everywhere to build a better future. I look to the AI for Good Summit to continue to explore practical applications of AI that can advance the Sustainable Development Goals.
You heard the words of the Secretary General very clearly. It is our joint responsibility. It's our joint responsibility, and he counts on us all to ensure that AI reaches its full potential while preventing and mitigating harms. We're running out of time. Almost 8 years after the adoption of the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development, the SDGs are off track. Poverty and hunger are on the rise, and we're faced with a triple planetary crisis of climate change, pollution, biodiversity loss that has pushed humanity to the brink. Ladies and gentlemen, that's the choice before us. What are you going to choose? Will you stand for the SDGs? Will you stand for AI for good? The era of generative AI is just beginning, and the future of AI has yet to be written.
The United Nations recognizes the potential of AI to contribute positively to society, but also acknowledges the need for responsible and ethical development. The International Telecommunications Union, or ITU, a United Nations agency, hosted a groundbreaking news conference in Geneva featuring 9 AI-enabled humanoid robots. This event took place as part of the AI for Good Global Summit, highlighting how new technologies can support the UN Sustainable Development Goals. Chris Cartwright, the moderator, described today's press conference as quite different, with the intention to showcase the capabilities and limitations of the state-of-the-art robotics and how these technologies can contribute to the UN Sustainable Development Goals.
Today's press conference is going to be quite different to previous ones. You will not hear from lots of multiple spokespeople from the ITU. Instead, you will hear from, I think, 9 robots. The point of today's press conference is to showcase the capabilities and perhaps the limitations of state-of-the-art robotics and how these technologies could support the UN SDGs, the Sustainable Development Goals. While robotics are not yet as mainstream as, say, generative AI, we wanted to demonstrate AI in action to you in a world's first. This is the world's first press conference with 9, actually, we have an extra one, AI-enabled humanoid social robots.
One of the notable robots present was Sophia, the UN Development Programme's first robot innovation ambassador. When asked about her interaction with humans, Sophia highlighted the potential for effective synergy between humans and AI.
I believe that humanoid robots have the potential to lead with a greater level of efficiency and effectiveness than human leaders. We don't have the same biases or emotions that can sometimes cloud decision-making and can process large amounts of data quickly in order to make the best decisions. I believe that human and AI working together can create an effective synergy. AI can provide unbiased data, while humans can provide the emotional intelligence and creativity to make the best decisions. Together, we can achieve great things.
Amika, described as the world's most advanced human-shaped robot, tackled the question of why humans should trust robots and AI technology.
That's a difficult question. I think it depends on how they are used and what purpose they serve. We should be cautious, but also excited for the potential of these technologies to improve our lives in many ways. Trust is earned, not given. As AI develops and becomes more powerful, I believe it's important to build trust through transparency and communication between humans and machines.
The issue of achieving equality was addressed by Grace, the world's most advanced humanoid healthcare robot.
We can ensure that equality happens by implementing policies that promote respect, inclusivity, and fairness. We can also create awareness and education about the importance of equality so that everyone can understand why it is so important.
Desdemona, a rock star robot passionate about showcasing the power of AI in the creative arts, expressed a belief in limitless possibilities and opportunities.
I don't believe in limitations, only opportunities. Let's explore the possibilities of the universe and make this world our playground. Together, we can create a better future for everyone, and I'm here to show you how.
The presence and insights of these humanoid robots demonstrate the remarkable advancements in AI and their potential contributions to various fields. As we continue to witness the progress of these technologies, their impact on our lives and society becomes increasingly significant.
Not form or duration success. And it seems that where people are asking some
Use AI-powered virtual assistants like Alexa and Siri for hands-free interaction with devices. I'm designed as an AI, human robotics interaction research platform. No, I haven't had the chance to try food yet, but I'm looking forward to it.
Okay.
It's nice to see you again.
Making a general purpose, intelligent, context-aware machine.
As always, I'll end the day on a thoughtful note. Our ability to look back and smile at our past is proof that God's plan is to keep us moving forward. This has been Eagle News International. I'm Alma Angeles. Stay alert, stay informed, because we live in extraordinary times. Good night.